I've been an RN for 37 years. I can honestly say to you, a lot of things have changed in that length of time. One of those things is mental health treatment. Thank God, seriously. And I can honestly say to you that in the last 150 years, the way that mental health has been treated has changed radically, for which all of us should be extremely thankful. Today on Paint a Beautiful Picture, we're going to talk about mental illness. And for some people, is it an excuse? In my family, there is schizophrenia, and there is certainly bipolar disorder. I had a very good friend when I was younger who had horrific MPD, multiple personality disorder. Hers just shattered because of childhood trauma. And over about a 10-15 year period, she was reintegrated into her one whole true self, and it was really astounding to see. It really was. It was really great to be a part of that. But here's something I want you to know. I think that oftentimes we are very quick to assign a title to something, and we don't even know what that title means, and we just take another person's word for it, and we kind of run with it, because it's a whole lot easier to do that than to have to deal with something we're not quite sure about or the ramifications of what we're looking at. And I understand that. I really do. But I think a lot of times today, people are so quick to assign something. Oh, this kid is bipolar. This kid is schizophrenic. This kid is really struggling with depression. I'm talking 6, 7, 8-year-olds. And it's very disturbing to me. And I think that maybe for some of you it can be, or you're just not sure. So let's talk about this. All right. Schizophrenia absolutely has a genetic component to it. In other words, if there really truly is a schizophrenic somewhere in your family, it's a possibility that one of your children could, in fact, have schizophrenia. I have a nephew, and I kept telling my sister for probably a decade that he had schizophrenia. So let's talk about schizophrenia a minute. If a person has a somewhat unstable personality, and really traumatic events happen to them. Sometimes one is enough, but it's usually repetitive, uh, and severity is negotiable. In other words, what some persons consider severe, other persons can tolerate. So it has to do with the strength of that personality. But when their personality can't withstand it, the personality breaks. So in the old days, they might have called that a nervous breakdown. And there would definitely be times in the old days when they would do things like use electroshock therapy or cold dousing therapies, really very physically traumatic things, thinking that they were going to get through to the mind. Uh, in fact, most of those things were not very effective. And a general schizophrenic who isn't dangerous, and believe me, some of them really are. Paranoid schizophrenics can believe everybody's out to get them and then go out and hurt other people. So there are elements of that that can be really dangerous. But mainly it is that they feel really insecure and scared in the world because their personality is not fully cohesive. This is not like multiple personality disorder where they're literally splinter groups, or this personality or this one, and they actually literally almost have a separate identity. I'm talking a personality that's broken. It doesn't become something else. It just isn't very cohesive, and this person can really struggle in the world. Then we'll talk about bipolar disorder, where someone can be very manic and do really questionable, wild and crazy, out of the norm things, and extremely depressed, where they cannot function, legitimately cannot function in this world. They cannot work. They cannot take care of themselves. They certainly cannot take care of any other person. It's not going to happen. They really are not coping. I'm going to stick to those because I think those are probably the most prevalent or common diagnoses which I will hear. Honestly, a lot of it is that these people don't have a lot of support. They don't have supportive care. In other words, no one's really looking out for them or literally having compassion toward them and what they're going through. And they're kind of floundering, but there isn't anyone there to, I'll use the language of a drowning person. They flounder, they flop around, and they're going wild until they kind of let go and accept, and you can get a hold of them and bring them. If you go to get them when they're floundering, you're just as likely to get drowned because they're going to grab onto you and pull you under. So it is a matter of timing and knowledge and concern when we get involved. But the rapidity with which they want to medicate people really gets me. So I'm going to talk about a few personal things. I had severe hyperactivity as a kid. Like, let me tell you, I was bouncing off the walls and then some more. And my mom already had 7 kids to handle. So my family doctor, and this is back in the 50s, you have to remember, said to my mother, well, we can put her on Valium. That's how hyper I was. And my mom said no. And I'm so glad she refused, really, because it would have had lifelong ramifications for me. So I'm really grateful that she didn't think that was a good option. Let me say to you, a lot of medications that are used today also have lifelong ramifications. Before you just let someone explain to you based on whatever terminologies that your kid is this or this or this, be a little cautious. So one of my sons really struggled with depression, and I would call it predominantly situational depression over some things that had gone on in his life, and he got really suicidal. He came and he said, Mom, I really need to go to the hospital. He talked to me, and I said, you're right, and I took him. The first thing they wanted to do is put him on meds. I mean, within an hour and a half, they're calling me on the phone saying, we should really put him on da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And I said, nope, you should not. Ooh, I'm telling you, I fought with those guys. They were upset. They were telling me how irresponsible I was. And oh man, I mean, there was a lot of pressure. This is why I know this one so well. And I still refused. I was like, no, you haven't even done one thing in observing him. And you want to put him on all these meds, and then you'll have no idea what's really going on. Like, no, you aren't going to do it. And they didn't. And for 2 weeks, he wasn't on any meds. And I still know, I can tell you this from the depths of my soul, that I was right. Absolutely. I've never backed down from that position, and I'm pretty sure I'm never going to. He ended up on some medications that did help him, and I didn't let him stay on them long term. They told me he was bipolar. I said, great. I mean, maybe he is. I'm not going to disagree with you. Bipolar disorder is a chemical disorder where certain components, certain chemicals in your mind are out of order. It really is a physiological thing. In the old days, they would use lithobid and it would straighten people out. So there's no question it's chemical. You get that chemical imbalance straight, and oh my word, a whole lot of this stuff goes away. That's not what they put him on. They put him on an antidepressant. And they said, keep a watch on him. And I did. Now, I explained to him that every person alive has ups and downs. This is a normal ebb and flow of life. And maybe his things were higher and maybe they were way lower. I never denied that. I acknowledged it. But I said, your actions are fully within your scope of control. So you're flying and zooming and you haven't slept in 3 days and you have all these crazy ideas in your mind. You don't have to do it just because you think it. And he's never taken medication in his adult life. And he has a PhD, and he is a stable human being, and he has long-standing relationships. He has never been in trouble with the law. He learned what to do with what was happening with him. I am not saying to you every person is capable of that. Please don't mishear me. Some people really might need that medication to be okay, and I support that. But don't be so quick to jump when someone who is a professional tells you that your child is this or this or this or this and just cram medication down their throat. and give them an excuse. Well, I'm this. So now we're going to talk about the excuse part. As a teacher, I'm telling you, I have seen this, well, I'm sure at least 100 times. So we'll use that number, which is quite a number, of kids who go, well, you know, Miss Newbie, I'm blank. And so I can't help it if I blah, 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 blah. That is an excuse. And I would always call them. I'd say, that's a lie. They'd be like, no, that's what my mother said. That's what the doctor said. I'm sorry. I don't really care. That is a lie. You are still responsible for your behavior, no matter what. And that's what you have to help your children understand. Do you know every normal human being has crazy ideas? It's a fact. I want to slit someone's tires. I want to beat the daylights out of somebody. I want to cut myself. These are really actually not that abnormal. Most human beings have crazy ideas at some point. Now, they might not have them every day or hundreds of times a day. Then you're really getting into the mental illness troubles. But everyone has crazy ideas. Not everyone does what they think, right? If I slapped everybody I thought about slapping, dude, I'd have been in jail so many decades ago. This is a true fact because I have a bad temper in my natural state, as I told you. But I have self-control, and I don't give myself or other people excuses. You don't need to give your kids an excuse either. If your child, in fact, has a mental illness, that's not an excuse to act like an idiot. Straight call. And you need to teach them that. It's like someone who goes, well, I have diabetes, so I can't help it if I go blind. Well, honey, if you're eating cookies all day long and ice cream and candy bars, yeah, don't give me this excuse. That's you. That's on you. For serious. And the same thing is true with your mind. Just because some crazy things fly through there doesn't mean you have to do them, even if you have a mental illness. So I'm going to go back to my very same nephew. I told my sister I tried to help her see it. She didn't want to see it. He beat the living daylights out of a couple people. Well, actually, he's done it a lot of times now, but the first time it ever happened, and he went in and he got under some evaluation. They found out he was a schizophrenic and they put him on meds. Wow. So much of all of that went away. Really. So I'm going to encourage you about a few things. Pay attention to your own child. If she is really struggling with some stuff, you should know that if you're paying attention. So you can give someone an honest report. Do your best to have open communication with your child so that if they feel suicidal, if they're having wild and crazy ideas, they'll be able to talk to you about that without judgment and criticism. You shouldn't be thinking stuff like that. I don't know what's wrong with you. Wow. So they can come and say, Mom, this is, wow, I kind of like, I don't know, I thought about beating the daylights out of my friend, and like I've thought about burning down the school. And well, why? Why do you want to beat up your friend? Like, do you hate school so bad? Did you think about all the other thousands of people that this is going to affect? I'm just saying, do you have as honest and open communication with your kids as you can possibly, so maybe they can tell you about stuff. Get your hands on a professional you can really trust. If they see the kid for 5 minutes and they're telling you all this stuff and they want to shove all these drugs down their throat, that's not what I mean. They didn't even do an assessment or evaluation. They didn't even talk long enough to your child to know anything. They're an arrogant, self-puffed up jerk, in my opinion. You don't want to deal with that person. I mean a reliable professional who's going to do some testing, who's going to take a little bit of time and say, yeah, I see some problem areas here, and this is what we should do. Okay? And then don't be scared of it. I always say this to people. If your child had the measles, you would treat it. If they had the flu, you would treat it. If they broke their arm, you would treat it. If they have a mental illness, you need to treat it. This is logical, right? but just be cautious that it is not an excuse for lousy behavior, because it isn't. Wow, I hope this really stirs up some thinking in your mind, and please send me questions, comments, an email. I would really love to hear from you. And take care of yourself, take care of your mind, and take care of your children. Give them all the support you possibly can. Hug them tight today. Thanks for being with me. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.